welcome. I hope you're having a great Thursday so far. I know some people will trickle into the call later, but for those of you who are here, welcome. I'll do some quick housekeeping before we get started. So you'll notice that when you join the call, you're muted. You're welcome to turn your camera on or off. I know some people might have people in the background. We're, in the school, so I completely understand whatever you're most comfortable with. This is just for people to come in, listen, share, ask questions. Throughout the meeting, this is very much a collaborative meeting, so feel free to drop any questions, ideas, comments in the chat or unmute yourself at any time if you can to, share a little bit or ask a question. We welcome conversation. All right, so at this Leadership Town Hall, we are focusing on a very specific topic, which is communicating the benefits of multi-age classrooms to prospective parents. After one of our previous town halls, someone mentioned that this was a challenge, and I think that many Montessori schools can relate to having this as a challenge because it's a big ask to ask families who may not be familiar with multi-age groupings. Hey, by the way, your 3-year-old is going to be in a classroom with 6-year-olds. That might bring forward some concerns to families. They might not get it. It's asking for a big leap of faith. So it's important to have some strategies in place to educate families, to inform them about the benefits, and just to make them more comfortable with the idea. Because again, when we're asking for, non-traditional ideas to be brought forth in a childcare space, it does require a lot of trust. And it's important to be putting things in place to build that trust. So just a brief overview of today's topic. We'll be talking a little bit about that trust building process, which really comes down to establishing yourself as a thought leader. We're then going to continue on to content marketing. I know that Montessorians don't like hearing the word marketing. It's not really in our DNA as Montessorians. We're not salesy people. But I want to reassure you that content marketing is just another term for educating. It's just creating content that is consistently educating families, whether they're current families or prospective families. And this is something that you can do yourself. It doesn't cost money to content marketing. It just takes time, a little bit of research. And obviously, it can be a little bit time consuming to put together these resources, but it's worthwhile. We'll then share some ideas and samples of resources that you can share with families to talk about mixed age classrooms and their benefits. We'll talk about consistent parent education and events that your school can offer as well. This is something that is crucial in the Montessori space, especially for community building, for retention, and for recruiting new prospective families. We'll talk about how you can discuss mixed age classroom benefits during tours and open houses, how you can maintain good communication with prospective families and make sure that their concerns are eased throughout the process. Because again, we're asking them to trust a philosophy that they might not be familiar with. So we're going to need to provide a lot of evidence, a lot of information to make them feel more comfortable with us. And then we're going to compare approaches. So I have asked several communities of Montessori leaders what they do when it comes to communicating the benefits of mixed age classrooms. So I'll share some quotes that I've collected throughout the past few weeks. And then I'll invite everyone here on the call to kind of share a little bit about what they do or allow people to ask questions. And hopefully we'll have time for Q&A at the end and of course throughout the entire call. So before we get started, I love for a little brief introduction. I know some of you have already joined our town halls before, but feel free to just drop in the chat where you're joining us from and why you joined today's call, just so we have an idea of, are we on the same page? Is this something that we struggle with when it comes to selling Montessori? Is this a challenging topic? Heidi, welcome back from Crystal Lake Montessori. Happy you're here. Vicky is joining us from Amelia Island Montessori. And Wally from Crabapple. Okay, great. So we've got a diverse group of Montessori leaders. Hopefully we can help each other across communities. So let's get started with building trust, which is really key when it comes to communicating these challenges. when it comes to asking families to believe in our philosophical approach, it's all about trust building and providing resources and really establishing yourself as a thought leader. This is something that can be done over time by providing great resources. So again, whenever you're in the early stages of talking to prospective parents or even just having information on your website, it's important to explain your approach thoroughly and provide evidence and resources so that parents can learn and feel a little bit more comfortable. Because while a parent might be very familiar with a daycare model or a public school model, they might not be very familiar with Montessori. And there's a lot of misconceptions about Montessori out there. For instance, oh, it's where kids can just do whatever they want. Um, there really are no rules in a Montessori classroom. The younger kids, they're working with older kids are working with younger kids, so they're not really challenged. All these misconceptions are things that obviously give prospective families anxieties about Montessori. So it's our job to be providing evidence and building trust that our process does work. It's a scientific process, which makes it a lot easier to communicate to parents. There is factual evidence, there is research that proves that our approach works. So let's talk a little bit about thought leadership, because I think this is where it all really starts. I think a school that has mastered thought leadership is going to much more successfully build trust with families and get those families who are like, oh my gosh, I see your vision. I see how it works. You've had so many success stories. I trust you with my child's future. Because that's a big thing. So establishing a Montessori school as a thought leader really involves positioning your institution as an authority. So when parents are learning from your school about Montessori, it's so much more impressive than if they just learn about it on some random blog or through Google. If they're gaining this information from you, it is so important towards trust building. This is huge when it comes to communicating the benefits of mixed age classrooms, because I think that this is one of the bigger leaps of faith that we're asking from prospective families. It's very unusual. It's not something that you see a lot in other models. So it's something that you might have to explain more than once. So how can your school become a thought leader? There are several different ways that your school can become a thought leader. And if you're, early on in your school leadership process and you might not feel comfortable doing everything, just starting somewhere is good enough. An example would be creating regular content. Again, this doesn't necessarily cost money. You don't have to hire an expert copywriter if you don't have the resources for it, but just sitting down and writing a little bit about what you know about mixed age classrooms or other things about the Montessori philosophy and publishing that on your website blog can be great. Providing families with resources is also great. So whether that's, a pamphlet, book recommendations, podcast recommendations, if it's coming from you, if the recommendations are coming from you and they learned something and you were the reference point, that really builds trust. Hosting events centered on education. So offering free information sessions, things like open houses count as this, where you're answering questions and providing valuable information about your philosophy, about Montessori in general, and parents are learning from you. And of course, giving great tours and open houses, which I just mentioned. All of these things are crucial, something that your school should be doing. If you can't do all of them, that's fine. Just focus on 2 things that you can master. If you're looking for a starting point, I really think it's great to provide families with resources and create regular content. I think that's super important. So content marketing, again, I don't want to use the word marketing too much. Just think of content marketing as educating parents. That's really what it is. It's creating content that informs families about the benefits of our approach and our philosophy. So we don't have that same luxury of traditional forms of education and relying on people's expectations. We have to set and manage those expectations and constantly be answering questions through our content. And like I said earlier, a lot of families have misconceptions about Montessori. So not only are they learning from us, they're also unlearning through our content. Again, when it comes to your content marketing, you're going to be explaining the same thing over and over again, and it might feel repetitive, but remember that new parents are seeing your content regularly. So even though you posted a blog about mixed age classrooms last year, maybe it's time to publish one again because you don't know who's going to be reading it, who hasn't read the previous blog or the previous social media post about it. So, make a list or organize a schedule where this is how often I need to be talking about mixed age classrooms. Twice a year, I need to write an article about it. I want to be posting about the benefits of it. Every time I see a success story in the classroom, or I see a parent who has, had a hallelujah moment that I've been like, wow, I saw my child who's 6 years old show a 3-year-old how to do something in the classroom and I get it. All of those things you start collecting and sharing and sharing and sharing over and over again. And this is content marketing. So again, it's not like you're using salesy language. You're not trying to say, buy one, get one free. That's not our business model at Montessori. You're just constantly educating these families. When it comes to blogs, and I'm going to offer a blog sample here, I think that you should really focus on writing a few different blogs about mixed age classrooms. It's something that we see throughout Montessori. We see it, and especially I think it's like the biggest issue for primary, because I think that's when a lot of parents might start into Montessori, is when their child is 3 and they're very unfamiliar. But also we see mixed age classrooms in elementary and middle school. So it's important to talk about it several times and provide evidence, pull quotes from articles, from research, and talk about how you've witnessed it work so well in the Montessori classroom and why your school believes in having mixed age classrooms. So there are several benefits to writing about this. So this is just a sample from our Nido website. This is nidosite.com. Feel free to check it out. It's our sample school website where we have loads of examples of different content, how you can set up your website. This is a very basic template of how we build our websites for our Montessori clients. But here's an example of the benefits of multi-age grouping blog. And you can check out the full blog on the nidosite.com. But I think that having things like this posted, maybe every 6 months on your blog is really great, because this is a topic that a lot of parents are curious to learn more about. So they might, be Googling away multi-age classrooms and they come across your school's blog and they can learn about it directly from you. And they're like, well, this school has a lot of resources on it. They have content on it. They must really know a lot about it. Maybe it's, I can schedule a tour with them, or I can ask more questions, or I can fill out an inquiry form and inquire more about it. So I think it's important and valuable to have content like this throughout your website. Strategic website content beyond just your blog as well is important to consider. So having information about our unique approaches is key. And mixed age classrooms isn't going to be the only one. Another thing might be, why do we have certain materials in the classroom, or why do we reference grace and courtesy so much? Why are children, using practical life tools like sweeping and cleaning in the classroom? What's the benefit of that? So these are the questions that we can answer through strategic website content. Bonus as well, adding some lead generators on this topic can help. And the lead generator on your website is basically when you're offering a resource such as a pamphlet, a brochure, or maybe something like a detailed scope and sequence. The ideas are endless. Or you can do informational one-pagers, which I'll show a sample of later, that you can offer on your website for free download in exchange for a parent's contact information. Based on the lead generator they request, you can send a personalized email to them based off of that. So for instance, if you have a family that requests information about or fills out a lead generator form for a one-pager on the benefits of mixed-age classrooms, you can send them a personalized follow-up email automatically that says, we see you're interested in learning more about mixed-age classrooms. And you can send them a detailed email about, why you have mixed-age classrooms. If you want to come in for a tour to see, what a mixed-age classroom looks like in real life, and how we know it works because we see it every day. So that's just something that you can do to overcome this challenge. If it's something that you see a lot when prospective families come in and inquire about your school. This is an example of how we address it in our program information. This is taken from our primary program information, and we explain here why we have a mixed age classroom. Again, you don't have to add pages and pages on it, just addressing it, briefly explaining why you do it, and then of course, you'll go more into depth and answer questions when parents come in for a tour or fill out a formal inquiry sheet. But it's important to address it and explain why it's something that you do. I love to pause here and see, what content, if any, do you provide on your school website about mixed age classrooms? Do you discuss this at all on your school website? Do you have any dedicated blog articles on this topic on your website for parents to read up on or learn more from? How do you address it on your website? So I'll pause here and see what other people have to say when it comes to having this information on their website.
Camilla,
Yes, Wally?
just this issue is definitely, I mean, the having this kind of content is definitely very useful to have it on the website. The problem we find is that the difficulty we get into with our parents, most of them that does cause issues, is those who are still insisting on treating the school as a daycare. They just come in and drop them off. They're not interested in learning anything. They never attend the parent night. And then when something doesn't go according to the way they want it, then they come and complain. So that's the thing that we just haven't been able to get our arms around it. If someone is interested, then I think we can provide a lending hand. But there are still, we have a bunch of parents who just think differently.
Yeah, and I don't think you're the only one experiencing families that might be like that don't understand that we're a school, we're not a daycare. We work a little bit differently. Attendance is important and parent involvement is important in our model. Um, I think a couple town halls ago we discussed that so we had a town hall on parent involvement in schools because this is a challenge, especially when you have a lot of households nowadays where you have two parents working. It becomes really busy and um, I think it's important to set those expectations early on and really address that this is a school and not a daycare. There are things like having parent commitment forms, sitting down with them early on in the admissions process and explaining, this doesn't work like a daycare because it's not a daycare. This is a school. And there are certain things that are expected of parents. There are minimum amount of parent events that every parent in the school is expected to attend. You have to at least attend, let's say, 2 of our 4 parenting classes a year. That's mandatory. We really feel it's valuable for children to receive the same messaging at home as they do in the classroom. It makes for a much better experience. So by communicating these things early on, it might help a little bit with that. Obviously, it's not going to solve every problem 100%. Some parents are still going to, prioritize work or see things a little bit differently. But I think laying the groundwork for that early on might help. Maybe someone else has an approach for this. I know Wally's not the only school leader who has experienced this.
Now, in defense of these parents, Camilla, I have to say that, I mean, just imagine a parent having twins and a toddler, and
Mm,
both of them working. They're going
right.
nuts in terms of their schedule, right? They may
Right.
have good intentions of doing that, but they physically just can't manage it. So, I mean, that's the reality in some cases. So, there are some parents who really don't care, some parents who do care, but they just have a kind of a schedule and the number of children that they're taking care of. It makes it impossible.
Absolutely. And maybe also if that's the issue, finding ways to be more adaptable to those families, so accessible. Maybe you can send out a survey and be like, look, I noticed you haven't been to our parenting events. Would it be easier if we offer an online version? How can we make sure that you receive these resources? Because they're valuable and we want every parent to have access to them, whether they're working or not. So how can we work with you to make sure that you have access to our resources? So things like that might be helpful, but definitely we have to come up with these solutions because I think that it has changed. The world has changed a lot, and people are very busy. And the reality is, we have to work with families to make things accessible. And it's a lot on our part. I know we have so much on our plate already, but it's something we have to strategize a little bit about for sure. All right. So again, when it comes to this topic specifically, mixed age classrooms and other things when it comes to Montessori philosophy, I think offering resources is huge. There's no better way to sell something, I say, than just offering helpful information. And I think this is what works best when it comes to getting prospective families to see what we're trying to do and kind of get on board with us is not by asking anything of them, just by offering resources. So if we kind of reframe things and instead of saying, just trust us, we're going to say, here's all of these resources so you can come to your own conclusion, but we're happy to offer as much information as possible. I think that kind of creates a better response from families. And when they can learn, they feel a little bit more comfortable with us. So I'm going to offer a couple of samples of resources that you can provide families to kind of put their minds at ease when it comes to trusting our philosophy and our approach, because it is different from the traditional approach. So this is an example of our one pager. The full one pager front and back is on Montessori Thrive. So if you're a member of Montessori Thrive, you can download this full one pager and you can print it out and have it ready for what would be great is if you have like multiple, because we have different one pagers to address every frequently asked question in Montessori, to have several ones of these printed out for families who come in for tours and ask questions. And you can, of course, answer it on the spot. You can say, we have a whole one pager here. I'm going to hand it to you that really breaks down everything you need to know about why we have mixed age classrooms. And it kind of goes into detail about why. And then, of course, you can explain it in person as well. But it kind of serves as a great resource for them to look back on later. You know, maybe they've toured a couple of other schools and they want to reference the resources that you shared. And they say, you know what? I really like this idea of mixed age classrooms. It's not something I'm familiar with, but I think, you know, reading up on it really, it kind of makes sense to me why they do this. So an example of a resource that you can offer. Again, this recording will be available on YouTube. So if you want to reference anything that I share, you can watch this back on our YouTube channel. Another thing is informational brochures and information packets. I know a lot of schools nowadays are going paperless, and this is fine to do on a virtual, in a virtual format as well, if you have a QR code or something like that to share with families. But I think that addressing kind of like the big concerns about Montessori on an informational brochure and information packet when parents come in is kind of a great way to help parents unlearn all the misconceptions about Montessori and learn the reality from you directly as a school. So I recommend, um, you know, offering these sorts of things just for free during open houses, during any event, and when parents come in for a tour as well. I recommend as well always in any sort of brochure information packet to include testimonials and social proof to your claims. I think it strengthens your claim a lot more when you have success stories from your own community. So if you can get some testimonials that are specific to why a parent just really saw, wow, the mixed age classroom really benefited my child. They have now become a teacher themselves and everything really clicked for them. The lessons sunk in so much more when they were showing a younger student how to do something. This is something that's great to include if you have that. Parent education materials, of course, this is something that we're always looking. The good thing about producing education materials is usually you do it once and you have it in your arsenal forever. Maybe you might have to go and tweak it, but if you sit down and take the time to create a good resource, you can use it for 10 years. You can use it for 15 years because every time it's a new set of eyes looking at this resource. So for instance, my sample earlier of the one pager, you write it once. The Montessori philosophy has been around for more than 100 years. It's still the same approach of what this is why we use mixed age classrooms. So you can use that time and time again for several new parents. So once you create it, it's kind of in your marketing arsenal. I recommend developing as many resources as you can to address frequently asked questions about Montessori and Montessori philosophy. Things like videos are especially strong today. I think video and photo content is important. Sharing articles. I recommend just Googling as much frequently asked questions about Montessori as you can find and finding very reputable publishers. There's loads of articles on Forbes, on the New Yorker about Montessori that you can repost on your socials or share that have a lot of supporting evidence for us. So they've kind of done the work for us. Um, Providing guidance on how parents can support their children's learning and development as well. So what can a parent have access to resource-wise once they are already enrolled is something to think about as well. I think a bonus, something that's usually overlooked, is using podcasts as a resource. The reason why podcasts are such a great resource is because parents are busy. They're doing things on the go. A podcast is one of those resources that they can listen to while they're doing their grocery shopping or driving. It's not a big ask like sitting down to watch a video necessarily. And there are loads and loads of podcasts about Montessori. I linked one here, which I'll share in the chat later, the link to it. This presentation will be on Thrive. But if you just search, on podcasts, Montessori mixed age groups or there will be so many results. You don't have to create your own podcasts, and just recommending them to families and being like, look, there's a great podcast about mixed age classrooms and why they work well. I recommend you listen to it. It's a 20-minute listen. Do it while you're driving the kids to school or doing your groceries. And it's a great resource that you don't have to create, but you recommended it. So it does still build trust. Consistent parent ed. So not only when parents come into the school for the first time, but consistently throughout their time with you. I know Wally says sometimes it's a challenge to get parents to come to parent ed events, but I think that it really does add so much to their Montessori experience when they do attend parenting classes and they see the value and the work that we do in our Montessori classrooms. And again, our approach is not traditional, so it's requiring a lot of learning constantly. Every Montessori school should be offering some sort of parent ed class, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person. It's beneficial for retention. It's beneficial for recruiting new families. It's really the best way to offer value. And I recommend having, some presentations that address concerns about mixed age groupings, because I think this is one of the bigger concerns that parents new to the philosophy might have. So if you're really noticing that families are struggling to align with the mixed age classroom topic, something that you can offer is a unique parenting class specifically on it, where you really go into depth about everything about that child's developmental period. So things like sensitive periods, the plane of development, you can talk about this is why we group the classrooms in this specific mixed age group. Once a child turns 6, after that, they're ready for the next mixed age group, and this is why. So really explaining this to families, it kind of gives them a reassurance that you understand what is going on developmentally in this child's learning process. So I think that it's a great way to build trust, build credibility, and it's something that you can offer for free to a wider community of families as well. You don't have to limit yourself to just parents that are enrolled. I think it's a great way to just recruit parents who are curious about Montessori. Hey, there's a free parenting class. We're having a free session about why we do this, and open it up to the general public. This is a sample slide, which will be in the next slide, of our Montessori 101 parenting class. We have a slide deck in our collection that really just goes over the very basic things a parent needs to know before they enroll in a Montessori school. It's a short presentation. I think it's only maybe over 20 slides. But if you're looking to offer this parenting webinar for free, you can just download the slide deck, make a couple edits, and it's ready to present to families. And this is a slide we have on mixed age groupings. You can expand on it much more if you want to go more in depth, but this is just a Montessori 101 workshop where it's very broadly going over, things like grace and courtesy, planes of development, sensitive periods, and then we address mixed age groupings. And I think just addressing the main concerns, which are usually my older children are going to be challenged as much if they're learning next to 3-year-olds, or the other side is my 3-year-old is going to get bullied, or they're going to feel pressured by the older children to be doing things that they're not ready for. So how does this model actually benefit them if that could happen? And then we can explain, well, it's a little bit different than what you may think. This is how it actually works. In the real world, we deal with people of mixed age groups every day. So this is a classroom that represents the real world. It helps build empathy, et cetera. And you can go into more detail about why we have mixed age classrooms. Another platform that you can utilize to convey this message is social media. Again, this is a free way to market your school. It costs no money to set up a social profile. Of course, it does cost money to run ads on social media, but it doesn't cost money to just simply post and share information and resources about your school. I recommend sharing stories about the benefits of mixed age classrooms. If you capture a beautiful moment in the classroom of an older child helping a younger child do something, I think that's something that you can share on social media and be like, this is why mixed age classrooms work so well. Look at the 6-year-old taking their time and showing patience to show a younger child how to do something in the classroom. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you can reshare things. You don't have to be the person creating all the content from scratch. You can reshare articles, podcasts, blogs, and other resources from other publishers or other platforms. Email marketing, I think that this is another way, again, to market your school for free. If you formulate a couple of email nurtures, it's a great way to build trust and offer, educational opportunities for families to learn more about Montessori from you. So you can have an email nurture that it's kind of like a Montessori 101 email nurture for prospective families where you explain the frequently asked questions about Montessori and smash the misconceptions that they can have. And one of the things you can address is the benefits of mixed age groupings. You can prompt parents, come and observe a mixed age classroom in action and set up a tour today. And it's a great way to kind of lead families in by putting one of our most, challenging ideas forward, because I think that this is again, asking parents for a leap of faith. Social proof, as I mentioned briefly, is huge. I'm going to offer a couple more strategies for how your school can support families through social proof. I think that nothing is more moving in the Montessori community than word of mouth. I think this is usually how we get most of our prospective parents to even walk through our door, is when they hear that another parent had a great experience at your school. So I think a school should always be collecting testimonials, and it's great if you can connect it directly to the benefits of mixed age groupings, as I mentioned earlier. See if you have current or past families that would be willing to answer questions of new parents. At last week's town hall, I can't remember who it was, but one of the administrators that joined the call had a great kind of program set up at their school where prospective families could call either a current family or a past family to ask that parent questions that they may have about their experience at the school. And I think that this is really great because it can put so much of these anxieties at ease. If they hear from another parent, oh gosh, I completely relate to you. I was also concerned about mixed age classrooms, but after, my child went through the process, I back it 100%. This was my experience with it. I noticed this in my child. And when a parent is hearing that on the phone, they're like, okay, wow, this, I feel like I trust it more now that I hear a parent had a good experience with it. So that's something that you can do. And yeah, I just recommend sharing success stories and observations about the benefits of mixed age groupings regularly. I truly feel that this is the most effective way to put parents at ease, is when they hear other parents had a good experience. Peer support networks, again, this is all about facilitating connections among parents whose children are enrolled in the multi-age classrooms. It's like just what I mentioned earlier. I think create opportunities for parents to share their experiences. If you can, invite them to your open houses so they can answer questions. Or if you have older kids, say if you have a middle school program or an upper elementary program and the parents are okay with the kids coming in and kind of serving as student ambassadors during open houses and sharing their experience, that's also super impactful. So I recommend, putting some effort into things like this, because it can be one of the most effective things in easing parents' concerns about mixed age groupings. When it comes to tours and open houses, this is your opportunity to educate and help parents unlearn a lot of the misconceptions about Montessori. They're entering your space, they're seeing your environments, and they're learning a lot more about your philosophy directly from you. So make sure to address any concerns a parent might have in detail. So things like mixed age classrooms, things like will their child be challenged, things like what is the curriculum like, why are there certain materials in the classroom? These are all things that you want to make sure to address in an open house, as well as just the general questions a parent might have, like tuition, when are your classrooms opened, etc. I also think that this kind of gives you an opportunity to feel out the parents who are going to be more aligned with your philosophy. If a parent comes to an open house and they're just worried about what hours you're open, they're probably going to be better suited for a daycare model. They're just looking for somewhere to leave their kids. If you have parents at open houses that are asking a lot of questions about the philosophy, why do you do this way? Those are the parents that you might want more because they're the ones who are really curious and willing to learn. And they're probably going to be the ones who later on show up to your parenting classes and want to get the most out of their experience. Observation opportunities, this could be in alignment with your tours and open houses. So I really recommend inviting parents, whether they're new parents, so prospective families, or current families. Of course, we do offer, almost every school offers current families to come and observe their kids. But just to see their classroom firsthand, I think is the most impactful way for them to say, okay, I see how a 3-year-old and 6-year-old can work alongside each other. So I recommend arranging guided tours and observation sessions where parents can see the classroom in action. We talked about tours and open houses at last week's town hall, and there were several strategies for this. Some schools didn't have the tours during school hours, so the classrooms weren't in sessions, and others did. Some had great strategies in place, saying that they had, make a one-sided window where mirror where parents could look in the classroom, but kids couldn't look out, so they could observe without the children noticing. Or they would allow people at a tour to kind of peek through a window so they weren't disrupting the work cycle. But I really recommend, if you can, have parents just observe what the classroom is like, because that's where they see everything coming into fruition. And then again, another important thing to consider is maintaining communication with prospective and current families. I know that we already do this, and usually we have parents who ignore our emails or don't read them, and we have to send 100 reminders, it feels like. But I think throughout the admissions process and during your current family's process with you, it's important to check in with families and see how they are feeling. If they're feeling any doubt about something about your philosophy or approach, if you can answer any of their questions or provide them with resources, or if you can invite them to observe. Another thing you can do is you can organize group conferences, one-on-one conferences, or information sessions. This is something that maybe is not as a grand scale as organizing an open house, something a little bit smaller. Maybe you have a limit of 5 families or something like that, where the point is to answer questions and offer personalized guidance about your approach and what your Montessori programs offer. You can share examples of student progress, achievements, and growth within the mixed age classrooms. And you can do this with current families, or you can do this with prospective families. But I think that just being there and offering your time to answer questions can ease parents a lot. All right, so before we wrap up the call and just open it up to general Q&A, I wanted to share some quotes. We asked other leaders in the Montessori community what they did across different community groups on social media and on our forum, and this is what some of them shared. Here's a quote from one of the administrators. "This is a really important topic to bring up all year long." I think that's a great point. You're going to be talking about it and repeating it a lot. "We do lots and lots of videos, photos, and posts all year long in a section in the parent handbook about the 3-year cycle. It depends what schools are like where you live, but schools around us let the children play in year one of primary, so the problem they have is not being challenged enough once they move on to school. So they're really focusing on the angle of actually having these children in mixed age classrooms during the 3-year cycle is going to challenge them and prepare them for the next stage in school. So this is a great angle. And again, they're reiterating that videos, photos, posts is really helpful to communicating this message. Here's another one. One of my favorite ways to communicate this to prospective families, I explain the map puzzles, how a 3-year-old will interact with it as just a puzzle, and then next year they'll start pinning the map. Finally, in their 3rd year, the child will trace the map color in the map, write the labels on themselves, and then label the map. I asked them to envision this with the map of the US, so that's 50 states. This is one material that they can engage with, the same work at many different ability levels. Another thing that I say to prospective families is that their first year, children are there to observe, the doers of practical life, of INSOL, and when they have those skills mastered, they continue to build their skills in the 2nd year to do more difficult work. And this year, they'll start working with some of the older students and start observing some of the more difficult work while still going back to practical life. And since I think they meant to put middle insets, sandpaper letters, and then in their 3rd year, they start putting all of their knowledge and produce work, larger projects, things that they've had to take multiple days, maybe even weeks to focus on. And that this entire time, everyone is observing each other and learning from each other. I also love to talk about mirror neurons and how children learn through observation, just like they would be doing work themselves. That's the value that they get out of working with other children. So this is a really beautiful philosophical view of it. This is explaining really how the Montessori classroom operates as a whole, and observation is really at the core of everything and how children learn. So this is a great perspective to have on it and to share with families. I think that this is something that you would probably share, not maybe in a blog, but on a tour or when you're answering questions one-on-one. But I think that explaining the beauty of how our classrooms work and how materials can be used differently year upon year is something that's really special for this topic. Another one here, you could invite parents to observe your class. That's the best way I found to convince anyone. You can ask them to talk to current parents. There's no bullying in a Montessori class because one of the main responsibilities of the school and the teachers is safety and security of the children. They observe the classroom methodically and are well aware of the dynamics. The trust and understanding approach encourages children to come to the teacher if they need something or want to express anything. Thus, often children will come and tell the teacher when they feel their classmates have done something that they don't welcome. To me, it seems these questions come from people who don't know how Montessori works. They are projecting problems they would face in a run-of-the-mill public school. As far as getting bored, I like to emphasize how, unlike in most public schools, there are lessons based on the developmental need and stage of the individual child. So advanced lessons would be given to the older children or even younger if the child is ready for it. So again, here this leader is addressing that usually this comes from anxieties from models that they may have already experienced, and they want to see, is Montessori a better option for my kid? How are they addressing these problems that I have experienced in a different setting? So this is another thing to consider. Here's another one. First, invite families to come in and observe. Also, we created a series of documents we call Did You Know? Each document is 1 page and focuses on an aspect of Montessori education that families wonder about. We use research to support what we write in the documents. We have a Did You Know about multi-age classes. I'll share with you when I'm at my computer. This was on a Facebook group, by the way. I really recommend doing this. This is similar to our 1-pager series. And I recommend, again, asking questions on forums. We have a private forum on Montessori Thrive. We have loads of different Montessori leadership groups. There's 3 I recommend joining if you aren't already a member of a Montessori group on Facebook. One of them is Montessori Administrators. Another one is Montessori Leadership Community. And another one is our own, which is Montessori Thrive. All of these are groups where you can ask questions about Montessori administration. So I recommend taking a look and asking the important questions there as well. All right, I'd like to open it up to just general discussion now. So I'd love to hear your approaches or your questions. Let's discuss. I'll stop sharing my screen. So before we wrap up. I know we covered a lot and we shared a lot of ideas, so. I'm also going to take this time to ask if there are any topics that you'd like to see discussed at a future town hall. What is, a challenge that you're experiencing as a school administrator right now that you want some support on? Um, Feel free to share in the chat or unmute yourself because we plan these very much around your requests. I'll also drop my email here. If you think of a question later, you can reach out to me. All right. I mean, if there are no questions now, maybe you'll think of something later. You can contact me at next. Oh, here, Allison. Parents often ask, do children do what they want all day? Or what if my child doesn't choose math work? What do the teachers do? I think a town hall on choice within the classroom would be beneficial. Okay, that's a great topic idea. Again, just another great frequently asked question that we see a lot of during tours and what prospective parents are asking. I'm writing that down. Also, freedom within limits. I think that connects well with that. Thank you, Allison. All right, at next week's town hall, we're going to be sharing a variety of tools to just make your life a little bit easier as an administrator. A lot of these tools are free tools that you can use, things like how you can operate surveys for collecting information on parents, different tools for emails, for emailing. We'll talk a little bit about our CRM as well, but also just applications to make your life a little bit easier as a school leader, because honestly, we're always looking to save time and spend more time actually in the classrooms and dealing with families than on our computer all day. So that will be the focus of next week's town hall. We'll also talk a little bit about just different tools, things like Transparent Classroom, Bright Wheel. What are the good options? What are other schools' leaders' experiences with these applications? So if you're curious to learn more and find support with anything regarding that, join next week's town hall. We're also in the midst of our Montessori Thrive parenting series. We had our third session yesterday, which focused on explaining sensitive periods to Montessori families. And next Wednesday, we have our final session of the month, which will be all about navigating parenting and creating a healthy home with practical tools. So anything from positive discipline, how to deal with tantrums, all of that will be addressed at next week's parenting session. Vicky says,
Camila,
yeah, sure.
um, as you're talking about the tools next week,
Mhm.
would you cover, for example, automation tools for admissions process? Would that be one of the things that you might cover?
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about things, how you can automate things like email nurtures or use things like lead generators to create automation, start your admissions process, how you can do all of that. Because I know it can become overwhelming when you're getting a lot of parents or you're getting a lot of leads, how to organize that and how to do things less manually. Basically, getting rid of entering everything into a spreadsheet over and over again, because that can be time consuming. Absolutely.
What I specifically meant was in terms of how they fill out the application form, registration form, emergency forms, like when they're basically enrolling, to kind of automate that rather than doing it like on paper. There are tools available that help you do that in a sense. So if you have something there that you might cover, that'd be useful. because a number of schools are trying to increase the or improve the productivity and
Yeah,
get away from the paper.
absolutely. Basically moving away from paper and doing
Right,
things more electronically. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. There are loads of things like that, like DocuSign, et cetera. So we'll talk about it, and I'll provide
Okay.
some examples of tools that schools can use. Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't want to keep anyone on. I know you have a busy day. If you don't have any more questions right now, that's okay. You can always reach out to me via email, and this will be posted later on our YouTube channel, so you can ask questions in the comments below. I also monitor that, so if anyone asks a question, I'll make sure it's answered there as well. Um, all right, I'll see you at next week's town hall. Until then, take care, and thank you so much for joining our session today.